Welcome on back to the 4th and 30 podcast. We appreciate you all coming back with us week after week. This week we got some Masters talk for you, some Hall of Fame talk that popped up, and then we got maybe a couple surprises at the end. So stick around and stay with us. It was an interesting Masters tournament, not necessarily from a competition standpoint. It was one of the more dull ones. We did get some excitement when some balls went into the water, played on Sunday, but that was pretty much it. Kyler, what did you see coming out of this? Like, what was your one big takeaway?
Well, my one big takeaway is Justin Rose, because that guy was leading the tournament. He was 7 under after one day, but it was, classic Justin Rose, because that guy's, he's had his chances, and he shows at times how good of a golfer he can be. At times he looks like the best golfer in the world, and there's no denying it, but then he comes back down to reality, and you just wonder when he's going to get that big win, because you almost feel like he's starting to run out of time. But he goes through these flashes where he looks like the best golfer in the world, starts 7 under, and then doesn't shoot in the red the rest of the next 3 rounds. So I kind of thought that was interesting. I'm still waiting on his big win. I don't know if it's going to come.
Yeah, he's getting awfully gray in the hair too, so his time is. Golfers can golf a lot longer than a lot of professional sports can play, but there is a time where he just won't have the physical ability anymore. So I don't know. It was a pretty boring Masters. The last 4 or 5 holes on Sunday got a little interesting. I always mispronounce the guy who was in second's last name.
Zalatoris?
No, the other guy.
Or
starts with an S.
Xander Schauffele.
Yeah, Xander Schauffele. That shot he put in the water, man, you could just see the despair on his face when he did it. He was chasing the leader. He had a chance. He was, I wouldn't say right where he wanted to be, but he was in fairly good position going into those last 3 or 4 holes. And then hit it. I mean, it's not like he chunked his shot or anything, but it just rolled it right into the water, and he was defeated after that. Then Zalatoris made a little run at the end that made it a little bit exciting. He played well he played well all the whole last round, but the last 3 holes, I think he had a birdie or 2 to make it interesting, but Matsuyama really wasn't too scared the whole time, it didn't look like.
The couple things I take away from it. One, you already touched on Justin Rose. Dude finished 7th and had 8 holes in the entire tournament to talk about. Honestly, he had 8 holes that put him in 7th place. Like the rest of the tournament, he was average at best. And then my prediction to win the Masters, I said he'd make the turning point this past weekend. Yeah, he didn't even make the cut. Is it time to say Rory McIlroy is just done?
No, he's not done. It's not over for Rory. He just got to figure some things out. So you see golfers go through this when they get further into their career, their body. So, when you're young, you can do things with your body. We saw Tiger do it. But then as you get older, things start hurting. You've got to change the way you do some stuff. And so Rory might be right there in that sweet spot. I don't think his time as the top golfer is done, but it's kind of time. There was at one time everybody had him right behind Tiger, and it's time to kind of let that go out the pasture, because he's never going to be that, but he's probably still got a major left in him at some point.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these guys who got kind of compared to Tiger. Rory and Jordan Spieth stick out. They started off their careers. They were looking like, maybe able to rival Tiger. Those are just, when you start comparing people to Tiger, their expectations get too high, and then they start, maybe they're starting to get in their own head. And I think that might be what happened to Rory. Now, Jordan Spieth's kind of rebounded a little bit. It's been playing better this year, but as a fellow golfer, those thoughts can creep into your head
for sure
so quick, and that might be what it is. And the consistency isn't there, and maybe this early, early success that these guys are having, and then starting getting compared to Tiger by the media dooms them. I mean, it's going to take a special person to have to
and if you
ever do that again, if ever.
If you ask any or most any golf pro or professional golfer, they'll tell you that golfing is more mental than it is anything. There's obviously some physical ability you have to be able to swing the club as fast as those guys do and make contact. But anywho, golfing is such a mental sport that having that pressure from the media, from your peers, from your fans, whatnot, that it would just eat the average Joe alive. You can't expect anything different out of those guys.
But man, talk about what Kyler's talking about. People comparing people to Tiger Woods. Talk about social media and modern day just taking things over and getting in people's heads. Because I mean, we do it in every sport. We compare guys in every sport. But out of any sport, maybe you got hockey and Wayne Gretzky, and then there's golf and Tiger Woods. No one's going to catch Tiger. It's like someone's going to have to be good for 15 years before you should even compare them to Tiger Woods.
And then you've got, not to discredit any of that, you've got 3 guys in tennis right now that have been phenomenal. They've all just 3 happen to be playing at the same time. That you figure if you kick any one of those 3 out, the Federer, Nadal, or Joker, you kick any one of those 3 out, and their numbers are crazy for.
And that's the crazy thing too, is we might not ever see anybody as good as any of those guys, and those 3 guys were all playing against each other. Like that just shows
last, like, 18
how
years.
dominant those 3 guys are. It's crazy.
And golf is just different. Like in basketball, you might be nervous before the game, but once the game starts, your adrenaline gets pumping. You get so into the game, it's so constant, you kind of stop thinking about it. In golf, I remember last year I was teeing off in the horse races at our country club tournament, and I was shaking out of my shoes with 40 people watching. I can only imagine what these guys go through. I mean, everything's magnified onto that one shot.
Every shot in golf in any tournament that you're playing in, whether it be your local country club or the Masters big stage, any shot in golf at any time in the 4 rounds is essentially like a pressure free throw in basketball, or a 9th inning at bat in baseball. Like everything's on you. You have to sit there and think about it the entire time. It's not like taking a jump shot in transition in the NBA, or just throwing a pass in the NFL. That all just comes naturally to you. It comes in the flow of the game. Golf, you have to walk up there, see all those beady little eyes staring at you, and look at the ball, look at your hands, look at your club, look at the hole, and think, I've got to nail this shot or else I'm going to get drugged through the social media. That's pressure I don't want.
Somehow you have to not think about that when you're hitting, which is amazing to me. And really, that's why I think Will Zalatoris did well. I mean, he was a bright spot of the Masters. It was nice to see someone new up there. Happy Gilmore's caddy. But I mean, and he actually has on his clubs written, Mr. Gilmore, I'm your caddy today, which is pretty cool as well. But that was fun to see. But he had no expectations, and I think that plays in a part. Oh, I'm just going to go out here and play. You don't really have to think about it. All these other guys have been around, and there's expectations for them.
Yeah, so the Zalatoris, that's a fun story. So last year when COVID happened, he obviously did very well in the Korn Ferry Tour, but because of COVID, they did not take the normal 25 players tour cards away. So he didn't earn a tour spot last year. So he's currently, after this finished second at Masters, he's 27th in the world playing golf, and he is not on the PGA Tour. So he's going to earn an automatic exemption at the end of this year, or he earns one if he wins a PGA Tour event this year, or if he wins 2 more Korn Ferry tournaments this year. But as it sits right now, he couldn't even play in the FedEx Cup, and he would be 13th in the FedEx Cup rankings if he was allowed to. Like, that's such a fun story. So, like, yeah, nobody was expecting much of him, but he was definitely expecting stuff out of himself. Like, he knew the trajectory he's on to play golf, and he's a young guy, and I think it's going to be a name we hear for quite a few years, barring injuries. But to go back to you guys talking about pressure situations, I have 2 of those wrote down on my sheet. They both go different directions, but the first direction I'm going to choose is Schauffele. So when he triple bogeyed 16, that ended up being a $600,000 mistake. So as sports betting becomes more normalized in the United States, and it's, sports betting on golf, especially golf is one of the easier ones to do it on. I like, are we going to start to see that maybe come into play on some players? Because I can see probably not at like Augusta, because Augusta's like this big regal like tournament, or probably not the British Open, but are we going to start to see at some random tournaments on the scoreboard, they're going to put up your odds and all of it, and like, how much you're winning and losing for these folks? Because golf is that sport that can take that over. And, there's big money change in hand. Like John Rahm shooting a 6 under on Sunday after going even the whole tournament, that won him $300,000 more dollars. Like a lot of money on the line for stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know how much that plays into these guys' heads. I think in order to make it to this stage, these guys are all confident in their abilities, and I don't think money really runs through their heads. I think they've got plenty of it. It's an interesting point, but me personally, I wouldn't know for sure, but I would say the majority of them, they don't even think about the money, and that's the last thing on their mind.
I would say
it's on bettors' minds, though.
I would say, speaking of bettors, though, like you're talking about if they posted it, and I'm not sure, that might be around the corner for golf. Golf's kind of, I don't know, it's a sport that it seems like, I don't know, it might think it's above that. I don't know if I could.
But I don't think golf does, because everybody at every level of golf, $1 a hole, whatever it is, like everybody's used to betting on golf.
I could see your point,
I think
Kelsey.
at the elite level, they don't want to post it. You know what I'm saying? But with that though, I do think you might see already social media has become a problem in the sports world at times. I think it could be even more of a problem with that sports gambling becoming
foreshadowing.
People just absolutely ripping athletes for messing up their opportunity at $100,000 on their bet that they made last week or whatever. I could see that becoming an issue.
We see it as an issue with fantasy sports.
Yeah.
If in fantasy sports, if somebody craps the bed, like people dog them. But
it's gotten so bad. You see college kickers get death threats when they miss a field goal.
But the other pressure situation was Matsuyama himself. So he did end up winning. So, but the thing is, during a normal year, he has a Japanese like crew following him everywhere. Golf is huge in Japan. Like he's not as good as Tiger Woods, obviously, but he is the Tiger Woods of Japan. Like he's their prodigal golf son. And so Andy North was saying that since he's the first Japanese player to win a major, and especially the Masters, this could be worth up to $1 billion with a B dollars in lifetime earnings for him in Japan. That's how big a deal this was for him. And that's a lot of pressure. So I think we saw it. He went to bed with a multiple stroke lead there Saturday night, and he shanked it on the first tee. Like, you see a little bit of that start to come out. Like, that dude had to be feeling a lot of pressure. When you have the weight of a nation, like, hey, go win this, that's got to be rough on him.
The adverse of that, too, is did anybody see the picture of him in the airport on Monday morning?
Normal dude.
Yep, 6:30 flight, Chicago to Tokyo or wherever he was going in Japan. He was sitting there with his green jacket draped over the chair next to him, sitting there by himself. Nobody had a clue who he was. And he had just won the biggest event in golf.
All I have to say is good thing he had a 4-stroke lead going into Sunday, because he shot a 1 over. Didn't exactly come through in the clutch, but nobody else did either. So
and if Schauffele doesn't put his tee shot on 16 in the water, this is a different story. Hideki wasn't closing the door. Xander had just birdied 4 straight holes. You know that Matsuyama was playing with him, so you know that that was in the back of Hideki's mind. And when Xander put that shot in the water, it was pretty much all but over. And I think that propelled Hideki and gave him a little relief to finish his round out. He knew all he had to do was shoot 1 over on the last 3 holes.
They were saying on the broadcast, too, that the sound from Zalatoris, from when he was birdieing or hitting good shots, the sound from the crowd, which in a normal year with, pre-COVID would be exemplified even more, was carrying over, and they could tell by his mannerisms. He's like, what's going on over here? Because they were like a hole or 2 holes delayed on updating the board, too, they said. So like the scores weren't immediately up to date. So he was like watching over to his right or his left or whichever direction it was behind him. Like, hey, what's going on back there that all these people are cheering every single hole?
But talk about being in the pressure cooker. Matsuyama puts the ball in the drink on 15. Here's my chance. Dink right in the water on 16. Yep. So, and then I did have one more Masters take. So Cody, your boy didn't fare too well here. +5 for the tournament. So with DeChambeau being the way he is, and that being like taking that scientific approach, almost OCD about the game of golf, this is not something I would have thought of if like I hadn't heard it this week. So the Masters is a tournament, one of like the only one they don't give out a green book, which means you and your caddy, you don't know all of the slopes of the greens, you don't know a lot of the yardages and stuff like that. I assume that is stuff that Bryson thrives on, you know, because he's so data driven and so analytical. If he doesn't have something that says, you know, oh, if I hit it this spot on the green, that's a 15-degree slope going to here, blah, 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 like that's probably going to screw with his head quite a bit. And so I wonder if that's going to mess with Bryson specifically at the Masters for the rest of his life with just the way that he approaches the game of golf.
Well, and for me personally, the NBA going through the analytics revolution right now that it is, when it comes down to it, analytics can be good or bad for sports, but it comes down to how you play the game. You know what I mean? And you might be right, Carl, is that he relies a little too much on the data and the science and the numbers and the yardages and stuff when, you know, bottom line is you got to go out there and you got to hit the ball in the right spot. And that's what great players are going to do. So if he doesn't have that data to rely on, then yeah, he may struggle at the Masters particularly or any other tournament that may be like that. But you know, when it comes down to it, players got to play. Whether you have that information or not, you got to be able to go out there and make that shot. And that's what some of those other guys did, you know. So yeah, I could see that be a problem.
He didn't make the shots, but I will say this. What are you thinking changing your driver before the Masters? Like,
yeah.
This is one of the most courses that you have to be the most precise on. And it's proven, I think, just like any other golfer, every golfer's game is a little bit different. And Bryson's game just doesn't match up well with the Masters course. You have to be precise. You have to hit good second shots, like Carl alluded to. They have no green reading cards. You do that all yourself. So maybe this course just doesn't set up well for him. But like Cody said, he didn't make the shots. And I would bet he's kicking himself for switching his driver right before the Masters.
Yeah, that's kind of silly.
So just to touch on what Cody was talking about, all the data-driven people and rather it's watch film or look at numbers in every sport. It's become a huge thing the last few years. And I like following the data-driven people. I follow a lot of them on Twitter for NFL, for Chiefs. But I cannot stand how they live and die by it. It's 50-50. I mean, you have to watch film. You still have to play the game. It's not all about the numbers and probability of what's going to happen.
Didn't you say last week that was the future of baseball with pitching?
And I do think it will come into a play. I do. I just said it's 50-50. You have to look at both.
Well, it's like the high school coach, the high school football coach that goes for it on fourth down every single play. You know, he's crunched the numbers and looked at the data, and it's far more successful at the high school level. But you got to think there's going to be, at least at the college level, at some point in time, some coach come along and try that approach. When it comes down to it, there's more to sports than data. There's a feel to sports. You know, everyone here playing a sport, everyone who's listening who's played a sport knows that the momentum and the feel and how, whether you're getting the lucky bounces and the breaks your way, there's so much just intuition to sports, way more than data driven. So I don't think relying specifically on data will ever pan out in sports. I could be 100% wrong, but you got to be able to just go out there and play the game.
Well, we've seen it a little bit, like the Ravens. They've started going for more on fourth down. the last 2 times they played the Chiefs, it's killed them because they went for it on 4th down almost every time. The Steelers went for it on every 2-point conversion in 2016 or something like that.
Didn't work out very
It
well.
did not work for them. Like, I get it. The numbers say it's going to work. It doesn't mean it's going to work. When you start going for it on 2 every time, people expect it. The different things happen.
Yeah, and the problem with those two situations are the sample size is so small on 4th down and conversions and 2-point conversions that you're going off such a small sample size. If everybody started doing it all the time, those numbers would change. But to Cody's point, the analytics and the data in crunch time, in close games, late in games, when plays need to be made, that's when things out of the ordinary happen. And if you're always going for the data, I think the human element wins out there majority than following the data, especially in those, crunch times, playmaking times where
the Rays pulling their pitcher in the World Series last year is the prime example. You got a dude out on the dish just dealing, and you pull him because that's what the numbers say. In the biggest pressure situation of your sport, like it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, but the other side of that coin, Andy Reid going for it on 4th down with the backup quarterback last year, or this spring, whatever it was. Like, it can work out, but also you can be the GOAT real fast.
Hey, Carl, pull your mic out of your shirt, bud. There you go.
You didn't like the chest hair rubbing against it?
It didn't sound particularly appetizing.
I got you. But yeah, so it could go either way. So, Green Bay, they didn't go for it on 4th down, kicked a field goal, and like, what are you going to do?
Oh, that was a terrible call.
But you're talking about Andy Reid. I don't know if Andy Reid was really data-driven. I think he just said, we're going to end this game right now.
Yep. He has
more so
bigger testicles than a lot of people
we're
do.
Gonna put it away right here.
That was off field. That was purely off field.
Do you guys remember
the example? Though, is everyone always talks about people late in games. NBA. If we're talking about NBA, late in games, Kobe Bryant wasn't as good. Everyone brings out up all these stats about how everyone's better than Kobe late in games, and nobody wants anybody else other than Kobe to shoot a shot late in the game. And you have to take into the data shows that Kobe's percentage is this. Well, he's double teamed and triple teamed because people are guarding him late in the game. Like, a perfect example is data is not always exactly right.
Let's go ahead and go on to the next topic. What do you say?
Well, let me shout out Phil Mickelson. It was nice to see Phil Mickelson somewhat in the mix. He shot even par. He ranked 21st.
72s every day. Or 75.
He shot 3 over, even, 3 under, even. I enjoy watching Phil play. Finished tied for 21st. That was fun to see.
I missed the pavilions, though, because I always liked Phil Mickelson having to hit a follow-up shot from somewhere random, like off a walkway or like out and somebody's eating a cheeseburger next to him.
He probably was. He just wasn't in the hunt, so it wasn't magnified as much.
Yeah. All right, but speaking of stats and analytics and how that affects the game, eventually all of this is going to make its way to this era of players are going to be eligible for a Hall of Fame. So we had a guy retire this week, Julian Edelman, and immediately, like almost immediately, the conversation started online: is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer? And I think a lot of us are on the same page here. But, we'll just go ahead and walk through that and just, Hall of Fame in general discussion here. So, Cody, is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer?
No, at all. And I said it when you first presented the question the other day in our group chat. If you're one of those guys that go by championships won, I still don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but you have to entertain the idea. But I'm personally more of a stats guy. Obviously, winning championships is a big deal in sports. It's the ultimate goal in sports. But I look at how good players were at their position, and Julian Edelman was barely ever top half wide receivers. I can name handfuls of wide receivers at any given time who were better than him. And so he had his big moments in the playoffs and in the Super Bowls and whatnot like that. And he was Tom Brady's go-to guy for however many years it was. But I just don't think that there's any way he gets in when you've got some of the names I was looking at before we started this, some of the names that aren't in the Hall of Fame. Shit.
So,
All right, yeah.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
So yeah, Julian Edelman. Let's just make this very simple. No, he's not even close to a Hall of Famer. Not even sniffing it. So couple notes here. He's had 3 100 or 1,000 yard seasons in his entire career. I'll just go ahead and tell you he's played 11 seasons, and Tyreek Hill is like 800 yards receiving behind him in 5 seasons. Tyreek Hill has more touchdowns than him. Was there ever a time that anyone considered Julian Edelman even? I don't even know if he was ever considered a top 10 receiver in the NFL for a season.
No.
He was one of the top 10. He was one of the top 10 left every year because they went so deep into the playoffs every time. But
right, but was he ever, like, if you listed the top 10 receivers, was there ever a year when anyone said Edelman? Like, how can that dude make the Hall of Fame? And it's been all over social media that he should be in the Hall of Fame, and I just don't understand it. It baffles me.
It's because he was a fan favorite in Boston, and they have a big voice when it comes to social media and sports. If Hines Ward isn't getting in the Hall of Fame, then Julian Edelman's not getting Hall of Fame. Another guy who's not in the Hall of Fame that would be way above Julian Edelman is Tory Holt. Yep. Tory Holt had over 1,300 yards in his first 6 seasons. So he only reached 1,000 yards 3 times. He's not getting in.
Yeah, so
Tory Holt.
I do want to.
Go ahead, Carl.
I do want to caution against it, though. So it is the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Stats. But Julian Edelman's not a Hall of Famer for some of those reasons because he wasn't ever like. You never feared Julian Edelman that much. You feared Tom Brady and his ability to get Julian Edelman the ball, but you
feared
didn't.
Bill Belichick, really.
Okay, yeah, but
you feared Tom Brady.
There was other reasons you didn't want to. There was other reasons you didn't want to play the Patriots. So arguably, to me, Dante Hightower is worth more to the Patriots as far as fame goes than Julian Edelman was. Like they don't win that 2015 one without Dante Hightower. So, you've got certain things like that. I don't believe he's a Hall of Famer. You guys have already brought up Tory Holt. You've brought up Hines Ward, but you've got other guys that aren't wide receivers either, like Jared Allen. Jared Allen had a great career, 136 sacks, 32 forced fumbles, led the NFL in sacks twice. He's not in, which granted this year was his first year of eligibility. And, they had some other big names on the list like Peyton Manning and Charles Woodson, and Calvin Johnson. But, there's other guys that are more deserving to be in there. So I'm sure the Patriots are already in there for their moments, and they'll be in there as a dynasty. So in a way, he'll be in the Hall of Fame. Like his name will be somewhere. He just won't have a bust, if that makes sense. Because he's important to football, but he's not important singularly to football.
He's important to the Patriots.
So I was looking up because I knew I sent something in the group that I couldn't remember what it was. What do you guys think of Brandon Cooks as a receiver? Average, below average? He's been in the league 4 less years than Julian Edelman and has more receiving yards than him. This debate is ridiculous. It like Edelman shouldn't sniff the Hall of Fame. I don't even know why people are so dead set on it. I don't understand it.
Because he's in Boston.
Yeah. And another argument I heard was, can you tell the story of football without the person? So like you can't tell the story of football without Eli Manning. Breaking up that perfect season and all that. So was Eli Manning pretty just above mediocre for a very long time? Yeah. But you cannot tell the story of football without Eli Manning. You can't tell the story of football without, Kurt Warner, without Peyton Manning, without a lot of other people along the way that weren't just quarterbacks, but you can do it without Julian Edelman. His one moment that people might latch on to is that catch against Atlanta where it's an inch off the ground, but you have one moment, you don't have a career of that.
Yep, and also I would argue to say that Tyree from the Giants had an even bigger catch, and I don't even know his first name. So David Tyree, yeah, he maybe had a more important catch or a more impressive catch than Edelman, and I don't even know if Tyree was playing 2 years later. So, you're right in that sense. I'm not saying you're wrong, but
that's a ridiculous standard to put someone in the Hall of Fame. For.
Yeah.
You brought up Eli Manning, so I got to say it. Is he a Hall of Famer?
Yes.
No.
I think he is. I do think he gets in.
I don't think so.
He might. But let me just say this: there's 2 years where he won a playoff game in his entire career. Those just happened to be 2 years they won the Super Bowl.
Everything went right in those 2 years for that team.
Their defense was amazing both those years.
They scored 17 points and beat the New England Patriots, one of the best offenses of all time.
There was 2 seasons where he won a playoff game. Dude,
all you can say about Eli Manning is that in those games, he did not turn the ball over.
Can you tell the story of football without him?
I'll use David Tyree's name. Yes, I can.
Who got him the ball?
He threw a heave up. He threw it was a prayer. He threw a prayer.
And it got caught. He put it right where it needed to be. That 1 centimeter spot right there.
He actually had 2 big passes.
Everything went right.
The one down the sideline. I don't know. Was it Manningham who caught that? Mario Manningham who caught the one on the sideline?
Yeah, I think so.
So he had 2 big passes. So 2 passes in Eli Manning's whole career that are worth anything.
Yeah. Still has 2 rings. I mean, that's 2 more rings than any of us will ever have.
Trent Dilfer has a ring too.
So does Chase Daniel, but who's counting?
And so does Joe Flacco.
I was just going to
so
say
does,
Joe Flacco's
Blaine
elite.
And Joe Flacco
Anyway.
in Philadelphia. Is he going to be their quarterback this year?
I don't think Philadelphia knows who's going to be their quarterback this year.
Anyway, I think Kyler and Cody both had something separately, but they had something special cooked up for this.
So
we'll start with Cody. I think I might know where Cody's is going, but
Okay, so we were doing him or him, which we all seem to enjoy a little bit. So I like the idea of it. We'll go back to him or him soon. But I'd like to start doing something like this every week. So if you're one of our devout listeners and you're listening right now, I want you to let us know in the comments, whether it be on Facebook, YouTube, however, reach out to us. If you listen on Spotify and there's no way for you to comment, hit us up on Facebook and let us know what your answers were. So maybe, if people come up with good answers, we can shout them out in the next podcast. So we're doing something similar to him or him today, but we're going to call this one Off the Dome. Okay? Rapid fire questions, and I want to hear these guys' answers on what the first player that comes to mind when I name this team. Okay? You guys ready?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
St. Louis Cardinals.
Molina,
Albert Pujols.
Albert Pujols.
Okay. Chicago Cubs.
Ernie Banks,
Sammy Sosa.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Ben
Ben
Roethlisberger,
Roethlisberger.
Jerome Bettis, guys. Come on. Los Angeles Lakers.
LeBron
Kobe.
James.
LeBron, Kobe, and Magic. Okay.
Man, I'm ashamed of this group.
The Dallas Cowboys.
Tony Romo.
Tony Romo. Yep.
Jones, Jerry Jones.
Jerry Jones. I said player. All right. 2 more. Miami Heat.
LeBron James.
God.
This guy's ridiculous. All right, last one.
Second person that came to my head was Udonis Haslam.
Alonzo Mourning, baby.
I was going to say Zoe, but Wade was first.
Okay, and Carl, what was your answer on the Cardinals?
Molina.
Oh, you didn't even throw out Mark McGwire. So mine was Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Jerome Bettis, Shaquille O'Neal, Troy Aikman, and last one, Cleveland Browns.
Joe Thomas.
Peyton Hillis.
Peyton Hillis, baby. That's who my pick was.
My actual was Baker Mayfield. I just wanted to say Joe
Yeah.
Thomas because the Browns are so horrible. I had to say an offensive line.
I had to think. I was like, that. I
What'd
wasn't
you-
ready for Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I know. That's why I threw that one in there. What'd you say, Kai?
I got nothing.
Okay.
Actually,
right.
I do have something for the Cleveland Browns.
In Cleveland than their quarterbacks did for like 20 years or something.
He had more wins than any Cleveland quarterback starter in the last 17 years
Just before Baker,
until
yeah.
this year. Yeah, in Cleveland Stadium.
All right. So like I said before we started that, let us know in the comments what your guys' were. I'm curious to, my mind when I heard this the other day, I saw it on TikTok, I was immediately going for old school guys. You guys kind of went a little newer school than me. But I just want to know what everyone thinks in general. So let us know what you think when you heard those teams.
I do want to defend the
Atlanta Braves.
Chipper
Jones.
Chipper Jones, the legend.
I do want to defend the Molina one, though. So we were just talking about Molina starting his 2,000th game for the Cardinals today. So I've had Molina on my mind all day.
Unreal.
Molina's definitely a Cardinal, and yeah.
All right,
yeah,
Kansas City Chiefs.
Priest Holmes.
Trent Green.
Andre Spida, was it Spida Rising?
Why was
Spider-Man.
Trent Green the first person to come into my freaking head? Gosh,
I'm mad that Cody said Priest Holmes and didn't say Jamal Charles.
No.
Priest Holmes was a monster.
Priest Holmes was great. Played behind probably the best offensive line of all time, though. Jamal Charles averaged 5.38 yards per carry, best in NFL history by over a tenth, like 0.16 yards.
He never held the touchdown record, though.
Most underappreciated player ever.
All right, Kyle, what
was
you
your
have for
special
us?
segment?
Okay, well, ever since I've heard the news of the Cleveland Browns signing Jadeveon Clowney, I've never seen somebody who, like Jadeveon Clowney, he got a $10 million contract.
1 year.
Yeah.
Does
$10 million
anybody
fully
else in here
guaranteed.
think that's too much money for Jadeveon Clowney?
Yeah, because he's
Yeah.
a headache.
There's 31 edge rushers that make at least $10 million.
Right. But
So
if this guy hadn't in college in a bowl game blow somebody up from Michigan and force a fumble, he'd be out of the league by now. He averages 4 sacks a season. 4 sacks a season in his career. 4.
Hold on.
Never has had double-digit sacks.
Can we look up the video, because I won't be able to find it now. Jadeveon Clowney as an edge player ranks like 17th in the league overall and top 10 against the run. He's the most, like, people hate on him so much. He is a very good player for what he does. Is he going to get a ton of sacks every year? No, but he's a very good player for what he does.
The reason he's went from team to team is because he hasn't produced like he was expected to. He's averaged, for an edge rusher in the NFL nowadays, you can't average 4 sacks a season and expect to still be on a team. He's only on a team because of that play at South Carolina.
I think I know why Kai is so fired up about this.
He is scared of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh at best is going to finish 3rd in their division this year.
We're not even talking about that. I'm talking about Jadeveon Clowney. The next question I have is, where's he going to play? Because he plays the position that Myles Garrett already plays. Who's swapping to the other side?
You ain't moving.
It doesn't
Garrett.
matter today's league. Justin Houston and Tom Ball used to swap all the time. They'll swap. They'll go back and forth.
I still think this guy's making money off his hit at South Carolina.
Yeah, you've made that pretty obvious.
Do you think he's kind of in that Albert Hainsworth conversation, making more money than he deserves by a whole crap load?
Oh, yeah.
You remember
I think
Albert
if he was
Hainsworth?
just an average Joe, he would not.
Hainsworth made like the most of all time, though, when he got his contract.
And
Clowney
didn't play
has
after
paid
that,
like
did
an
he?
average edge rusher. He's not even getting paid.
Clowney would be
donuts
getting
all
the
the time.
veteran minimum if he hadn't made that play at South Carolina.
Man,
Dude, I
don't
gotta
know
look.
about
I gotta
that.
look these ranks up now. You're just wearing me out.
He's still a physical monster. I mean, you've said it yourself before that teams will run the other direction from a good defender. What if that's happening to Clowney?
He played opposite T.J. Watt or J.J. Watt.
J.J. Watt's played what? Maybe 8 games last 3 years.
So is Jadeveon Clowney.
He's played more than that.
I'm not gonna be able to these ranks. He was like 17th overall PFF, and he was like 8th against the run or something like that. You can't say the dude's a scrub. It's just not. It's not the truth.
I think he's overpaid.
Okay, one more. I got one more thing real quick. I'm gonna switch subjects again since we're just
It's one
about.
of those stupid TikTok things.
No, we're
Hey,
we're
we have
about out
viewers
of
on
time.
TikTok. You can't
Yeah,
say stupid TikTok.
We've got
things.
more views on TikTok than we do on YouTube. So, all right. Last thing from me, since we're about out of time. With the injuries we've seen in the NBA, Embiid sat out a while, LeBron sat out a while. Who's your guys' MVP right now?
I think it sets up nicely for Joker, especially with Murray getting hurt. If they keep the same pace or somewhat close to it, I think Joker has a very good shot at winning the MVP.
Yeah, I do too. I hate that for the NBA from the competition standpoint because I just don't think the Nuggets can go real far without
No.
Murray.
No.
Second
So,
round max.
Yeah, so it hurts them in the playoffs. It helps Joker's chance because he's going to have to elevate his game. I think it just boosts all the guys who are a step below. Maybe Spida, Dame Lillard, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, whichever one you want to put in the conversation.
Would Harden have an
Harden,
argument
yeah,
in there?
Harden has a big argument right now. But the problem is he's been sitting out some
phenomenal.
games, so
But he's been out. Yeah.
yeah. So
I'm gonna make a bold statement here, but what about MVP for Chris Paul?
I would totally
You just
support
said
that. Yeah.
I think that Booker would be higher than Paul, and I understand why
And-
people would put Paul there, but I think Booker is.
And
if
that's-
you pick an MVP team, I think it's Booker.
That's the problem they're going to run into too. Is they're going to be splitting votes. Say that LeBron sits out another three weeks, like they're saying, he's out of the conversation. Say Embiid misses any more games, he's out of the conversation. So you got those. I would say Harden's the leader now if he doesn't miss many more games. But then I'd say you got Joker, Dame, and then probably Booker and Chris Paul, and they're going to split votes from each other, which sucks because I would like to see either one of them win it. But
Well, we know the voters always vote. Stats play a big part in it. But honestly, if you're asking me who has the biggest impact on their team right now, consistently, it's Chris Paul, and he'd be my pick for MVP. I just don't think the voters will go that way. But also, I think there's a big case to be made for Damian Lillard. I mean, if anybody's deserving of an MVP, it's Lillard and Chris Paul.
Well, keeping that team afloat while everyone was hurt says
you can't
more.
just give a guy an MVP because you think they should have one, like their career says they should have one.
I
you
think
can
this
make
year would be the
argument for
perfect year to
Paul.
do that.
You think you can make the argument for Paul, but the thing is, like, everyone's saying Paul because they're better than they were last year. But the fact is, if they didn't have Booker,
I'm saying
wildly
Paul because
better
of the last 8 years, his whole career, how much better he's made each team he's been on.
And you can't look at it like that. I agree with you, Kyler. We talk about that all the time. How much better he's made all these teams he's played for. But you
it's
but you
okay
can't
to do that. You can look at and be like, oh man, we've been missing on this guy because he doesn't put up the numbers. But man, the impact that this guy's having on a team, maybe he is the MVP. You can look at it that way.
But to say
the voters just probably won't.
To say he made the Suns better is criminal to Chris Paul. The Suns went 8 for 8 in the bubble and still missed the playoffs. Is how far out of the playoff picture they were last year. This year they're number 2 and threatening to be number 1. I mean, they are that good too. I don't think anybody. If the Lakers stayed healthy, I think the Lakers would be ahead of them. But that's it. I mean, they are a top 3 team in the West.
There's no doubt the Suns are night and day better. I'm not arguing that. But Bridges is also night and day better. Booker's gotten better. Ayton's gotten better. The team has gotten better too. And my point I was making wasn't trying to take away from Chris Paul, but I'm saying you can say the same thing. Like people were saying because they're better from last year, adding Paul. But if it was Paul was on the team last year and you added Booker, they would be night and day better too. Like if Booker wasn't on the team last year and he joined the team this year, they would be a ton better than they are now. Because without Devin Booker, they don't have a guy who can score at will like they do now.
If you give them Devin Booker, say you take Devin Booker off the team last year and swapped
How'd they
in
do
Chris
last
Paul,
year with Devin Booker?
They are better adding Devin Booker, but Ayton and Bridges don't make as big a jump until Chris Paul gets there.
Fair.
Ayton's a good player.
Suns had a 466 win percentage last year. This year they're 720.
I wonder what their average age was last year, though, because that's a young.
It was really
That's what
young.
I'm telling you. That
It was
team
really
was young, and
Okay, so this year they're 720. What would they be without Chris Paul? They'd be a 500 team,
a little over 500, probably.
barely over 500.
Yeah,
But also,
Well,
to
they
Kelsey's
honored
point, if you
Booker.
take Devin Booker off that team,
they would be about a 500 team.
they would still be 500.
Yeah, but if they have a roster of 2 people instead
would
of 10
put-
people, then they would be a lot worse too. I mean,
I would put their roster up against OKC's roster last year if they didn't have Devin Booker.
And-
Maybe even
And
better.
OKC finished right. What'd they finish? 40?
611. They had a 611 win percentage, and they took who was it? They took to 7 games in the playoffs.
Clippers.
It was the Rockets.
Oh, Rockets.
Rockets.
Yeah,
They
Rockets.
took
Yeah.
the Rockets to 7
So
games.
another
Who have James Harden, who supposedly is the MVP of the league.
question for you, kind of related to the same team. Suns and Jazz, do they have better opportunities now in the West with all these injuries that are happening, or do you guys think the Lakers will
For
just
sure
improve on
they do.
The
AD
Lakers, the Lakers are going to pack it in until playoffs. They don't, as long as they don't end up below the 6th seed, which I don't think they can. They're going to sit LeBron as long as they can to not threaten to drop down past 6. AD should be back like any day now, I think. They'll be fine. The Suns and the Jazz are going to have a fairly easy first round, I think. The Mavs are scary.
And so with Jamal Murray getting hurt, you wouldn't have wanted to see Denver in the first round because they were going to give you a hell of a series. So, now that kind of takes some pressure off of that. So I do think, to Kelsey's point, that these injuries are going to make it seemingly easier for the Jazz and Suns to try to get there. But, you're going to have to go through LeBron James. Like, it's not optional.
If the Lakers are healthy, then you're probably taking the Clippers could beat them. I wouldn't see the Jazz or the Suns beating them in a playoff series if the Lakers are healthy. But you have to be worried about their health because, LeBron's not historically been injured, but he's getting old. AD is consistently injured, and there's a very good chance that he gets, I hope not, but I hope he's healthy for the playoffs, but you never know.
We got to think, too, the Lakers are probably wanting to hover that 4-5 spot, too, because they'll want to see Denver in the first round. If the Clippers can leapfrog Denver and get up into like the 3 seed, and LA and Denver can stay 4 and 5, that's a pretty easy cakewalk for the Lakers in the first round. And then you got the Jazz in the second round, who I don't think they're scared of. The Jazz are good. They'll give them 6 games probably, but
Denver is going to have trouble staying there.
Yeah, for sure.
Joker, he can only do so much. So.
Yep.
But I think that's going to wrap it up for us this week. I hope you've enjoyed our Masters Talk. Please, like Cody mentioned, please make sure to answer some of those questions in our comments. See if you had any hotter takes. Just whoever off the top, or what do you call it, off the dome?
Off the dome.
Whatever you come up with off the dome, go ahead and put that in a comment section for us, and we'll review those and see if you're better sports fans than us. So I appreciate you all tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Be good out there, and tell your grandma. Buckets.